Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yasodhanandana Braja Jananjaya. Yasodhanandana Braja Jananjaya. Yamuna Tira Heaven Yamuna Yamuna Tira Heaven Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhavam Kunja Vihari. Jai Radha Madhavam Kunja Vihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yasodhanandana Braja Jananjaya. Yasodhanandana Braja Jananjaya. Yasodhanandana Braja Jananjaya. Jamuna Tira Jamuna Tira Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Boom. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Nitai Gaur. Nitai Gaur Hari Bham, Hari Bham, Hari Bham, Hari Bham. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki jai. Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 4, the Hamsa Guhya prayers. This is text number 47. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Aham evasam evagre. Nanya kichantaram bahihi. Samgyanam matram avyaktam. Pasutam eva visvataha. Aham evasam evagre. Nanya kinchantaram bahi. Samgyanam matram avyaktam. Pasutam eva visvataha. Aham evasam evagre. Nanya kintantaram bahi. Samgyanam matram avyaktam. Pashutam eva vishvataha. Anyone else? Okay. Aham, I, the personality of Godhead, Eva, only, Asam, was, Eva, certainly, Agre, in the beginning, before the creation, Na, not anyat, other, kincha, anything, antaram, besides me, bahi, eternal. Since the cosmic manifestation is external to the spiritual world existed when there was no material world. Samgyana matram, only the consciousness of the living entities. Avyaktam, unmanifested. Prasuptam, sleeping. Eva, like. Vishvataha, all over. So, after offering prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Daksha now is hearing the Lord respond to his prayer and speaking about himself. The Lord speaks about himself. Before the creation of this cosmic manifestation, I alone existed with my specific spiritual potencies. Consciousness was then unmanifested, just as one's consciousness is unmanifested during the time of sleep. Purport. The word, this is a very long purport. So if you have a lot of patience, attention, it's going to be a tough one, but stay with it. It's long. The word aham indicates a person, as explained in the Vedas. Nitya nityanam chaitanas chaitananam. The Lord is the supreme eternal amongst innumerable eternals and the supreme being among innumerable living beings. The Lord is a person who also has impersonal features, as stated in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Vadanti tat tadvad vidvams tadbam yaram avyayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti subjite. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So, rather than read the whole purport, I'll read it part by part. So here we're getting an understanding of the absolute truth, in the sense that the absolute truth, which is the supreme cause of all causes, manifests himself in three features of himself. Vadanti tat tadvad vidyams tadvad jnanam avyayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaneti. So God is one. He's not two, he's not many, he's one. But he expands himself according to particular needs, both from in the spiritual and both in the material. So he has innumerable expansions, but his primary expansions are two, which is Paramatma, which is hidden, the Supersoul, which is there within the heart of all living entities. Where do you get intelligence from? Supersoul. Supersoul is the source of your intelligence. When Supersoul is there and you want to think of something to do, Supersoul gives you that intelligence. And sometimes you don't listen to him, and therefore you make mistakes. But if you listen, if you can hear Supersoul, he's there, he's talking to us all the time. He's reminding you, you want to sleep, but you should get up and go to Mangalarti. But you don't listen. So he said, all right, at least go to Guru Puja. But you say, no, I'm coming to Prashadam. So Supersoul is always giving us the best possible information, advice for our spiritual growth. And then you have Brahmeti, which is the manifestation of the spiritual energy which pervades the entire creation. And that is in the form of the living entities. There are living entities everywhere. Just like what can we see in terms of the living entities? We can see We see the humans, we see the animals, we see the trees, we can see the creepers, and sometimes we see the insects, but there is so many living entities we can't even see. They're microbes, they're germs, they're invisible, but they exist. Just like within our body, we are the chief soul within our body, which governs the activities of the body. But there are thousands and hundreds of thousands living entities within our body. So every time you take prasadam, you're feeding all of these living entities. So therefore, you should never reject prasadam. Because you're doing great welfare work for thousands and thousands of living entities. And even in the atmosphere that we exist here, within this room, we can count how many living entities in the human form, but we can't count how many living entities there are in the unmanifested, unseen form of living entities. So many. So this is the Brahman, or the spiritual energy that pervades the entire creation. They say it's also Krishna's bodily effulgence, which manifests itself from so many, just like the sun. The sun is localized in one place, but still the sun expands its energy in the form of sunshine throughout the creation. And the sunshine can be in many places at once, but the sun is only in one place. Just like within the heart of the living entity, God is there, but he's in many places at once. But he's Bhagavan, he's also in one place in the spiritual world. But through his different energies, he manifests himself in innumerable living entities known as the Brahman effulgence. Now the rays coming from the body of the Lord. So this is the absolute truth, these three features. And Brahman is what the Jnanis, those who meditate, those who perform austerities, those whose desire is to free themselves from the suffering of material energy. They study the Vedas and they try to free themselves from all material activities, and they enter into a state of meditation, a kind of impersonal meditation. That's the beginning of spiritual realization, of God realization. It's preliminary. Higher than that are the yogis. The yogis try to understand that God is in the heart of all living entities. Guyatamam, he's there, he is the supreme truth, but he exists in his personal feature as Supersoul. When Prabhupada commissioned one artist, actually two artists, they drew one picture. Prabhupada wanted a picture of the Supersoul. And he's got 4 arms, and he's 9 inches tall. It's mentioned also. And he sits within your heart, and he's expansion of the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. But he only exists in the material world. He doesn't exist in the spiritual world. But he does exist in the spiritual world. In a different form, with a different purpose. But his main purpose is to guide the living entities in their struggle in this material world. So when people want material desires, fulfill material desires, he reminds them, Sarvasya chaham riddhisani visto matat smrti jnanamapo. If you want knowledge, I give it to you. If you want to forget me, I help you. If you want to remember, then I also help you. So God sitting in the heart is giving all of this. To awaken the super soul requires austerity. The yogis perform tremendous austerity. We have Vishwamitra Muni. He was sitting in the midst, in the hot sun, in summertime, with 7 fires all around him, and was engaged in meditation. In the winter time, he would go into the water up to his neck and meditate, performing tremendous austerities in order to realize one's not the material body and to awaken on the understanding that God is in the heart. And then, of course, the whole process of Astanga Yoga, Niyama, Pranayama, what was it? Pratyahara, Asanam, Pranaya, and Dhyana, and Samadhi. Now the yogis go for that process. Very difficult. Krishna says in this age it's impossible to perform because you need the ideal place. And there's no ideal place unless you go to some secluded place in the mountains, far in the Himalayas, and meditate. So the yogis nowadays, they can't realize, they simply try. And they perform austerities, and then they open up some shop and sell some medicine. That's all they do. They call themselves yogi. This is Yogi Joe's medicine, you know. You get this and you can feel good even after sex life, you know. So they give you all kinds of medicines. So the modern day yogis are not so proficient because nobody can perform these austerities in Kali Yuga. There's a few, but not very, very common. And of course, the ultimate principle of God realization is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And we can see him every day. We come to the temple, he's there, along with his internal energy, Srimati Radharani, and his expansions in different forms. And he is personal. The Lord in the heart is also personal, but he doesn't appear in a personal form, at least visible to our eyes. But Krishna appears in his personal form, in the form of the deity. And that deity is the exact representative or the exact replica of Krishna in the spiritual world. There's no difference. When you see the deity and you think that is Krishna, yes, that is Krishna. And he manifests his form exactly the way he is in the spiritual world. And he's in the mood of Madhurya, sweetness. He plays upon the flute, attracting all living entities to his darshan simply by his appearance. He's so beautiful, powerful, sweet, and very, very merciful. We can pray to the Lord in the form of the deity and ask him for devotional service to him. Don't ask him for anything material. He may give it to you, and then you might suffer because you get it. So you should only ask for those things which will help you in your spiritual life. And so we go on. So these are the three manifestations of the Godhead. So therefore God is one, but in essence, he expands himself into many for the sake of functioning, both spiritual and material functions. Okay, so it goes on to say, as firmly declared in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord can be understood only by Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti-amam avijananti yavanyas tattva-tattvataha. So he says, you can do Jnana Yoga, you read Bhagavad Gita, the whole 6th chapter, different yogas. There's Karma Yoga, Bhagavad Gita, the first 6 chapters deals with Karma Yoga. The second 6 chapters deals with Bhakti Yoga, and the last 6 chapters deals with Jnana Yoga. So Krishna takes the time to explain the different principal yogas. There are other yogas too, Astanga Yoga, which is called Raja Yoga also, and various others. But as he ends the 6th chapter, he says, Yoginam api sarvesham madgatendranat maraha bhajate, what is it? Sarvam bhajate yomam te me yukta tahamo mataha. He says, out of all of the yogis, and there's so many different types of yoga, yogi means to connect. Just like you can connect with someone in this world in different ways. You can have a very superficial relationship, or you can have a more friendly relationship, or you can have a very deep relationship with a person. So the same person you can have different types of relationships with. So the different yogis are like that. But the complete yoga is bhakti, because bhakti is the yoga that is intrinsic to the soul's existence. Just like I say, well, the whole purpose of life is to work hard. Haribol. You'll think, there must be more to life than that, just to work. Well, the whole purpose of life is to study books and become proficient at knowledge. And you think, well, that's nice, but there must be more. And then if I say the purpose of life is to exchange love, then you think, yeah, that's it. So bhakti means the yoga of love, to engage in devotional service. Karma is there, we do activities. Jnana is there, we study scriptures and understand the relationship that we have with the Supreme Lord, and many other aspects of transcendental knowledge. But bhakti means to serve Lord. What is that verse? Ayabhisat sita sunya jnana kamananavritam anukulena krishna siladam bhakti uttamam. So as someone asks you, well, what is bhakti? If you know this verse, then you know what is bhakti. Bhakti means free from karma, the gain that karma gives, free from yoga, free from jnana, free from all of these things, and to serve Krishna with a desire to please Krishna. That's bhakti. Not only serving Krishna, that's nice, but with the desire to please the Lord through your service, like that. So how do we have to learn how to please Krishna from the spiritual masters. We also get indications from the scriptures, but the Guru is the one that teaches us how to serve the Lord. And if we follow that very carefully, and then we can offer our activities in devotion to Krishna, and Krishna accepts. Some people say, well, how do we know Krishna is accepting my offering? How do we know that Krishna is pleased by my offering? So, as one yogi says, when you're pleased, then God is pleased. He's bogus. If you're pleased, then God, but it's the other way around. When God is pleased, you're pleased, because He is the source and you are the extension of that source. We are the particle of that energy, which is non-different in a minute sense of the absolute truth. So when we please, because we are connected to Krishna, there's one thing you should always remember: you can never be unconnected to Krishna. You can be unaware of your connection, that's called Maya, but you're always connected to Krishna, all the time. You can't get away. But bhakti awakens that connection and in the awareness, and when Krishna is pleased, you feel happy, you feel satisfied, you gain transcendental knowledge, and you make progress towards the goal of life. So bhakti is actually trying to please Krishna. Just like when you love someone or you have some regard for someone, you want to do something to make them happy, right? So you think of ways to make them happy. And if you do something and they're happy, you feel happy, right? It's just natural. That's life. That's the essence of life, really. So when we please the Lord, when Krishna is pleased, we feel happy automatically. It's just, that's Krishna, because we're connected to Krishna like that. So that is the process of bhakti. And when it develops intensity, then that service becomes more and more intimate. And we start to really absorb ourselves in trying to please Krishna. Hearing about Krishna, learning about His qualities, offering prayers to Krishna, thinking of Krishna in different ways, understanding what is Krishna and how he deals with the material energy, how He deals with the living entities in the world, how He deals with me. You can also understand how He's dealing with you through the process of bhakti. But he always deals out of love, not out of, some people say, well, God punishes you. No, God doesn't punish you. You punish yourself. When you don't take to the process of yoga, bhakti, you're causing yourself difficulties, and that's your own punishment. But God doesn't punish you. He gives you the way to get free from the punishment of living in this material world by engaging in loving service to Him. He teaches that, and He inspires that. And we don't follow it, then we suffer. That's all. That's simple. Okay, then it goes on to say, He cannot be understood by speculative philosophic research or by meditation, since all such processes came into existence after the material creation. So this verse is about before the material creation. The impersonal and the localized conceptions of the Supreme Lord were more or less materially contaminated. So the yogis, they follow that process. Why is impersonal realization, or the process to attain impersonal realization, contaminated? How would you answer that? If someone says, well, there's so many yogis, there's so many tapasis, so-called sadhus, many who are very austere, but the scriptures say they're contaminated. What is the contamination? Selfishness, yeah. They're thinking of their own personal gain. They use the absolute truth to gain something. But the devotees, they, just like Prabhupada says, the Christians, they pray, my dear Lord, give us our daily bread. So they want something to eat from God. And we say, my dear Lord, what would you like me to cook for you today? So that's the difference. So we're thinking, what would Krishna like? Or what would the devotees like? And that's bhakti. And the impersonalists, or those who practice various types of spiritual elevation, are motivated by personal gain. Of course, our gain is that we awaken our attraction for Krishna, which is the ultimate gain. But we don't try for that. It comes automatically when we serve Krishna. So devotees are free from personal desires because they just want to please the Lord and please the Lord's devotees. So here, as it goes on to say, the real process, therefore, is bhakti yoga. Bhakti-amam abhijananti. Only by devotional service can I be understood. Before the creation, the Lord existed as a person, as indicated by the word aham. When Prajapati Daksha saw him as a person who was beautifully dressed and ornamented, he actually experienced the meaning of the word aham through devotional service. Each person is eternal. Because the Lord says that He existed as a person before the creation, He will also exist after the annihilation. The Lord is eternally existing. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur therefore quotes these verses from the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So here's two verses. It says, there's no translation, I don't think. I'll skip the Sanskrit. I'll just go on to read. The personality of the Godhead appeared in Vrindavan as the son of Mother Yasoda. So these are the verses. Who bound the Lord with rope, just as an ordinary mother binds a material child. There are actually no divisions of external and internal in the forms of the Lord. When He appears in His own form, the unintelligent think He is an ordinary person. So, sometimes when Krishna comes to the material world, He acts like an ordinary person. He has a mother, He has a father, He does things that normal people do in this world. He fights, he plays as a child. And they think, well, okay, He's God, but He takes on a material body. But Krishna says, Avajanti mamudha manusim tanamasmata param bhavam jnananto mama bhuta maheshwar. He says, that's foolish. I descend in my eternal transcendental form when I come to this material world. I'm not part of this material energy. He is the controller of the material energy, but the material energy does not control him. But then, for the sake of a pastime, sometimes he appears just like Lord Nityananda was there. And so he was preaching Krishna consciousness to these two very sinful persons, Jagai and Madai. And Madai got very angry at Lord Nityananda, and he threw a pot, a broken clay pot, and hit Lord Nityananda in the head. And his head started to bleed. So people say, well, he's bleeding, that's material. But that's for the sake of the non-devotees. He appears like that. He doesn't try to do anything extraordinary, only when it's necessary. It's like when Krishna left the world. How did he leave the world? He was shot in the foot by a hunter with an arrow. Now, who dies by getting shot in the foot with an arrow? And people say, well, yeah, this shows that he's not really God, he's just some powerful personality. So, but the acharyas give extensive explanations that in order to keep the non-devotees in their materialistic concept of God, he doesn't disturb that. He doesn't disturb that. He may appear to act as an ordinary person, or even less than ordinary, just for the non-devotees to keep their illusion. Because you can't know, if he comes to do miracles, then people will say, oh. Just like, I remember many years ago, 1996 was the actual year. Maybe some of you were around then. It was during the Chaturmasya. And so it was the milk fast for that month. So around the world, they were offering, in different temples, they were offering milk to the deities, and the deities were drinking the milk. So they put the milk on the altar, and they come back, and it's gone. So this was happening everywhere around the world. And so, and people were getting, oh, wow, he's drinking the milk. We were thinking, now we don't get any, because he's drinking it. So I remember I was sitting in the temple in Chicago, and one gentleman came in. Miracle, miracle, God's drinking the milk, miracle, miracle. I say he drinks it every day. But you just don't see it, that's all. This time he's not so nice, he's not leaving you any. So sometimes the Lord does that for his own transcendental pleasure or to accomplish something. But he's not out to make miracles just to impress people so they say, oh, because bhakti is voluntary. You can't force, just like you try to force your children to become devotees sometime. But they resist because it doesn't work. But if you you encourage them and they voluntarily accept it, then they become devotees. If you force someone to become a devotee and they become a devotee, after some time they will not maintain that because it's forced. Bhakti is voluntary. It comes from the heart, it comes from one's individual. The class is over at 9:10? It's over. 9:30 the class is over. Okay. So now Krishna, he's acting like an ordinary person, but he's not ordinary. So he comes in his own body, but his body never changed. So it goes on to say, in this regard, Madhvacharya quotes two verses from the Matsya Purana. After the annihilation of everything, the Supreme Lord, because of his Sat Chit Ananda, original transcendental form, remains in that form. But since the other living entities have material body, the matter merges into matter. In the subtle form of the spirit soul remains within the body of the Lord. So this is when at the end of the creation, the annihilation, then the living entities merge back into the body of the Lord. So before the next manifestation, the only thing is conscious is God. God is there. As he says, before the creation, I existed. During the manifestation, I exist. And after the annihilation, I exist. So in all three phases of time, before, during, and after, he remains there. But the living entities, during the interim period, they are in what is called a sleep state. And therefore there is no consciousness, as it's mentioned in here. The Lord does not sleep, but the ordinary living entities remain asleep until the next creation. An unintelligent person thinks that the opulence of the Supreme Lord is non-existent after the annihilation, but this is not a fact. The opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead remains as it is in the spiritual world. Only in the material world is everything destroyed. Brahma Lina, merging into the Supreme Brahman, is not actually Lina or annihilation. For the subtle form remaining in the Brahman effulgence will return to the material world after the material creation and again assume a material form. So we come back after so many unlimited, countless years of sleeping within the body of Mahavishnu during the interim period. We again come back during the next creation and begin to where we left off in our last existence. So that's very rare because ultimately the living entities usually transmigrate body after body during the creation. It's only certain living entities who are there within the material world who leave at that time. Now, sometimes people ask, well, I'm doing devotional service, and I'm engaged in devotional service. And now, what happens if the annihilation comes? Do I have to go into the body of the Lord and stop my devotional service? And wait till the next creation before I can begin? Good question, huh? You might think. Because it says that devotional service is not dependent on anything material. It is always free from any material effect. So the answer is ultimately that those who are performing devotional service, when the annihilation comes, they go back to Godhead. Special privilege, even if you're not a pure devotee. You'll go back to Godhead. You'll become purified simply by the arrangement of the Lord. Because the Lord can make you pure. He can just look at you and you're pure. But that's not the process he uses. This is special mercy that comes only at the annihilation. When the material body is annihilated, the spirit soul remains in the subtle form, which later comes back again. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead remains eternally in his original spirit. So God is there, always. He is actually, some people say, well, there is God and then there is matter, there is this and that. But actually, from the highest point of view, everything is God. Prabhupada in one lecture, he kind of shocked all of us. He said, everything is Krishna, we are all Krishna, you're Krishna, I'm Krishna, we're all Krishna. Haribo. He's been saying anyone who says he's God is dog. Now he's saying we're all God. But what he was making a point, and then he clarified the point later, that from the absolute point of view, there's nothing but the Lord. But the Lord manifests himself in different energies which come out in the form of the living entities in different forms. And in the creation of the material existence also. So in one sense, just like the sun and the sunshine is not separated, but the sunshine is not the sun. The sunshine can be in your room, but the sun is not in your room, because if it was, you wouldn't be there. So the sunshine is intimately connected to the sun. It's never separated from the sun, but it's not the sun itself. So everything is God, but everything is not God at the same time. So therefore, when you will know that, there's no place you can go. If you know everything is God, and everything is the energy of God, and He's controlling everything, there's only one thing to do: surrender. That's all, because that is the culmination of all knowledge, is that everything exists simply for the purpose of the Lord's existence. He has many purposes, but He exists entirely in different manifestations of Himself. So everything is the Lord. Even dead matter, which is cut off, just like this floor is wood, but it was part of a tree at one time, and that tree was alive. And that tree is the energy of the Lord, because it is made out of wood, and wood is one of the energies of the Lord. It's a feature of earth, and God creates earth, water, fire, air, and ether to manifest the energies in this world. So everything is Him and not Him at the same time. So that's the highest understanding of, when you know that achintya beta beta tattva, it's called. Inconceivable, simultaneously one and different. So we are one with God and different from God simultaneously. That oneness is bhakti. The difference is that we are eternally a particle of God and never can become the actual whole. We remain separate. Why do we remain separate? Even during the manifestation we're separate, and even during the perfection we still remain separate. Why? For the purpose of exchanging love, which is the purpose of life. So we are always separate from God, and at the same time intimately connected with God, like that. And just like even the non-devotees, they're connected to God through His material energy, but they don't get the benefit of being connected with God. They simply get slapped by the material energy. They have to suffer because they chose not God, but they chose God's energy as being the supreme worshipable thing in their life. They worship the energy rather than worshiping the source. But devotees worship the source because they know if you worship God, the energy comes anyway. Sometimes devotees come to me, I have this problem, I have this problem. I just said, just chant Hare Krishna, read the books, associate with devotees, all your problems will go away. That's not practical, but it works. The point is, if you have faith, because it's just like if you have a $10 expense and you don't have the money, but somebody gives you $100, then you have $10. So when you have Krishna, you have everything. So the idea, the solution to all problems is Krishna consciousness. But that's a process. But Krishna is very merciful. Therefore He says, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's the way to connect with the Lord. Chant Hare Krishna. And come, offer your prayers to the Lord. Pray, my dear Lord, I want to chant better. I want to chant more. Please give me your mercy. And that's a real prayer. Not like, well, there was one person, he wanted a lot of money. And he was thinking, when you want something, you go to God. He was pious. So he said, he made a deal with God. He said, my dear Lord, you give me $1 million and I'll give you half. That was his program, okay? So And he worked really hard on his projects, and money came in, and he got $500,000. He didn't get $1 million. And he said to the Lord, he said, if you give me $1 million, I'll give you half. I'll give you half. I'll offer it to you as a donation to you. So he only got $500,000. So his friend, and he didn't give anything to the Lord. And his friend knew his promise. He said, you said you were going to give half to the Lord. And he said, yeah, I did. I asked for $1 million. He gave me half, so he took his half already. Not like that. It doesn't work. Jai Sisi Madan Gopal ki jai. Sisi Radha Madan Gopal ki jai. Okay. Prashna? Questions?
Just you explained that what we should pray to the deities, that I want to chant your name, please give us mercy, and Krishna will do that. But we see that, since many years we are chanting and we are praying also to Krishna, that we want to chant better, but how that mercy will be manifested? How we can able to know that, our chanting is really progressing or is pleasing to Krishna and as per our Guru Parampara?
Chanting is supposed to make the heart soft. If the heart doesn't become soft, if it remains hard, then the holy name just bounces off. It doesn't go. It goes to the mind, but it doesn't go to the heart. Transformation of the soul's existence is to make the heart soft. And gradually the soul becomes awakened. So we have to practice that mood of, therefore Lord Chaitanya says, Tranadapi sunichena tayoriva sahishnuna manina mamanidena kirtaniya sadai. Practicing these qualities, humility, tolerance, pridelessness, and respect for all living entities, what's the result? Kirtaniya sada. Always be able to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. So we have to cultivate these qualities as we practice Krishna consciousness. It's not that we just chant, but we have to practice the mood of chanting. And that mood is the mood of service. If we're chanting, but we're not enthusiastic to serve, or we're not looking for opportunities for service, our chanting won't develop. We'll give you some protection from Maya. It'll free you from some suffering, but it won't give you the goal, which is love of God. Like that. So we have to practice these characteristics. And we do that by serving the Vaishnavas. When we serve the devotees, then we can awaken these qualities more and more. And it's a process. And we have to develop. And if we commit offenses, or if we're still connected to activities that cause us to commit offenses, then the process is slow. So what Srila Prabhupada would give the initiation ceremony, he would always, many times, not always, but most of the time, he would always have the 10 offenses recited to remind us that, yes, chant Hare Krishna, but avoid these offenses because they will block your progress in your chanting. So that's important. So work on that. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur says, if you really want to think, where can I put my time and energy and attention to make progress in devotional service, do two things. One is practice attentive chanting. work on your attention and try to bring it to the point where you can become fully absorbed in chanting the holy name and serve the Vaishnavas. And you do these two things and everything else will become easy and follow. These are the essence of bhakti. And these are the two things that Lord Chaitanya made important in his. He told Rupa Goswami, he instructed Rupa Goswami, there are 5 main processes of bhakti that are very powerful. Chanting the holy name, associating with Vaishnavas, reading and hearing Srimad-Bhagavatam, worshipping the deity form of the Lord, and living in a holy place. But Mahaprabhu emphasized 2. That was Vaishnav Seva and also chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha. He actually mentions a third one too. That is called Jivadoya, which means to bring others to Krishna consciousness, show mercy to others. This is Lord Chaitanya's formula. He made it simple, right to the point. So if we emphasize these things, then Krishna consciousness becomes nice. And, of course, sadhu sangha means Krishna Katha, not Gramya Katha. Devotion associating with devotees means to talk about Krishna or talk about devotional service. Not talking about, well, so many things we talk about, but not nothing. Any other questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj, for the class. So you are saying about the chanting. So in the chanting, what happens? Mind always goes to the past or to the future. So very rarely mind is in the present moment, actually. So like either laments or hankers. Mm-hmm. So that Brahma Bhuta Prasamma, na shochati, na kankshati. Yeah. So because of this, the attention is not there in the chanting the holy names. Either it thinks about the bitter past or happy past or the future, what will happen.
Yeah. Well, you can't let your mind control you. You have to control the mind. If the mind controls you, it'll take you wherever it wants to go. So what does Krishna says? Whenever and wherever the mind wanders due to its unsteady and flickering nature, bring it back under the control of the self. So the mind wanders to these different thoughts, you bring it back to the sound. When one devotee, one senior Prabhupada disciple asked Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, when I'm chanting, I can't control my mind. Prabhupada said, what is this mind? He said, just hear, that's all. Listen to the sound. And when you find your attention is going away from the sound, bring it back. But become aware of the fact that your mind is not there. Not that you go into like 1 hour, oh, where was I for the last hour? I was in Mumbai, shopping or something. No, you don't want to do that. You have to keep trying to hear, and then you notice when your mind goes off, you can say, oh, I'm not hearing, then you bring it back. You just keep bringing it back. When you practice bringing it back, that's all. Prabhupada mentions 2 things. He said we should chant in the mood of calling for Krishna. So there's prayers that we can offer either before our japa or during our japa. And one of the main prayers is spoken by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Ayi nanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishame bhavam buddho kripaya tavapada pankaja stita duli sadrisam vichintaya. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servant. Somehow I've fallen into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and give me a chance to serve your lotus feet. Yeah. So we're asking for, we're suffering. We're here in this material world, and we're asking for the Lord to pick us up. That's the mood of chanting. We can pray like that. And Krishna, when he sees you're serious, he will help you. He'll remind, when your mind goes off, he'll remind you, oh, you're not thinking of me. And then all of a sudden, you become aware. He helps you. But if you're not serious, then it's hard for you to you can't hear him reminding you. So practice, that's all. Offer prayers, and when the mind wanders, bring it back. Make sure you chant in an atmosphere that is free from disturbances. Anything else? No questions. Everybody knows everything, I guess. They don't have to ask any questions. All right. Next time I'll listen and you can give class. Because I could probably learn something. All right, thank you. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.
His Holiness Candramauli Swami Maharaj ki jai.